Welcome, everyone, to the Zest Wellness Design Your Life podcast, brought to you by Colonial Group International. My name is Allie, and I'll kind of be behind the scenes during this podcast. We have Nathan Kolar, who's going to walk you through it. Before we get started, and before you learn how to design your life, we can just list off a few of our ways to stay connected with Zest Wellness before you guys get into it. So you can find us online on Instagram, on Facebook at Zest Wellness CGI. We also have a Zest Wellness blog where you can find a couple other tidbits that might be useful for your health and well-being. And then we're also continuing to do these webinars. So the next one's going to be on nutrition. So you're definitely going to want to keep your eyes peeled to that. And with that being said, Nathan, let's head over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali, and thank you everyone for joining. Today's webinar is called Design Your Life, with the subtitle being A Life Well Designed is a Life Well Lived. And so Ali and I were just kind of chatting right before this webinar started. We were both chatting about how excited we are for this topic because it's something that's very close to both of us. Because if we want to be our best selves, if we want to incorporate health and wellness into our lives, we have to have the time, we have to have the focus. And so by designing our life, it's much easier to also design our healthy habits, and the two can both integrate with each other. So what we're actually going to do until and for our full hour here is we're going to accomplish 3 objectives. And these objectives are pitched in the form of questions. These questions are: how can you balance your career with your family? How can you make a difference in the world, which brings up purpose, which brings up fulfillment? And we're also going to talk about how can you be at your physical best? How can you be like a high performance athlete who you're accomplishing your objectives at work, you're satisfying everything in your personal life, you're performing at a high level, because when you can do that, you can help others. The backbone of this presentation is actually by an amazing book by 2 Stanford researchers, Dr. Burnett and Dr. Evans. And so if anyone is really keen on learning more about this topic and going deeper into the various exercises that we'll go into, a lot of these are based on this book called Designing Your Life. Now, let's get started into our first slide, because what we want to do to begin things is we want to set our foundation, which is our mindset. We know that we need a foundation because, if a gust of wind comes, we can still stay sturdy. And so the first thing to keep in mind is that when we talk about a well-designed life, it's one that is called generative. What that means, it's not rigid. It's not, in a box, perfect square lines. It's something that's constantly evolving, and there was an element of surprise coming. There's a really cool quote by a gentleman named Joseph Campbell who wrote a book called The Hero's Journey, and that's actually what the Star Wars franchise is based on. And what Joseph Campbell said is a quote that goes like this: "Let go of the life we planned so as to accept the one that is waiting for us." So always be open-minded and keep our eyes open for what can come next, and know that we don't necessarily have the answers right now. So our life is constantly being generated, and it's a process and it's a journey. Because we also know that even things like burnout is much higher when individuals have a rigid mindset and a narrow perspective. It's kind of like a rigid mindset and a narrow perspective is like mindlessness, where you have mindfulness. Right? Mindfulness being paying attention in the present moment and being non-judgmental. That's what this is all about. Now, from a high level, a well-designed life is all about problem finding and also problem solving. If something is too easy, we lose interest over time. If something is too hard, we lose hope. But challenges, as long as they're realistic and as long as we have the resources and the support, that is actually what makes us our sense of accomplishment and what we feel more fulfilled for. So well-designed life does have problems, but also problem solving. So problems are not the enemy. Always keep that in mind. It's not always a smooth process, but we can accomplish things over time. And the third one here, being super interesting and novel, is that passion comes after action. I'll repeat, passion comes after action. In other words, passion is something you grow into. So, when you hear others saying, follow your passions, you might say, I don't have a passion or whatnot. We're going to get into kind of how you can uncover your passion, but just know that it's all about action, action, action. Now, as we move forward here, a really cool line, and I'm going to read this word for word right here because it's very powerful, is that exercise may be the breakthrough that leads you go to beyond limitations in whatever area you choose. Choose to become one of the unlimited. So now when we talk about our mindset and we talk about that connection to a healthy life, it's not always about health as the end goal. It's about health and wellness as a leverage point to accomplish your life goals. We're using health for our life goals. We're using health so we have enough energy, so we can have enough time with our loved ones. We're using health for the other aspects of our life. If you keep that in mind, it's much easier to create healthy habits because you know that that health benefit can lead itself to different areas of your life. Something that I think about when I read this line is that I was recently doing this little tourist attraction, and to do this tourist attraction when I was on vacation, you had to walk down these very steep stairs to do the tourist attraction. And so for someone who necessarily might not have high flexibility or might have a lot of joint troubles, they wouldn't be able to necessarily walk down those stairs. And if they did, it would have been that much more dangerous for them because their physical ability is limited. And so when I think about it, I think, oh, wow, I can do this tourist attraction. I can have this fun aspect of my life right now because I'm unlimited, because I practice these healthy habits to become unlimited so that there's no physical limitations for myself. So something to keep in mind. As we move forward to our next slide here, we're connecting physical and mental health. We know the link between depression and type 2 diabetes. And what you can see by this graph right here is that this is evidence-based research showing that, hey, if there's inactivity, so if there's no movement, there's no exercise, essentially health is not present because we know health is movement is foundational to health. So if there's no movement, if there's inactivity, we can see your change in lean mass, which is muscle. You can see you lose muscle over time. You're inactive, you lose muscle. But you can see by the bar that is shaded dark here, inactivity plus high cortisol, which results from stress, will even decrease your muscle mass that much more. So crazy combination between physical and mental health here. So it's one thing to be inactive, you'll lose muscle over time, compromise your health. It's another thing to be inactive, and then on top of that, being stressed and have a lot of cortisol in your body. Hyper means a lot. Hyper. Now we have our lean mass go down even more over time, and therefore our health is compromised even more. So something to keep in mind when we go forward, that our thinking, the way we feel about our life, that we're designing our life, can impact our physical health and things like our muscle mass. Now, my favorite part about all of these Zest Wellness webinars is our ability to always implement application. And so there's this, I heard this from someone else, this called the jacuzzi effect. And so there's one thing when you're listening to someone doing a presentation and they might have such a nice presentation, and you learn so much. And so right now you're in the jacuzzi, you're in the hot water, and then all of a sudden that presentation ends, you go home, you go back to your office, you go back to your work site, and you can't necessarily apply anything. You don't have any action items. You go cold again. So you went from being in the hot jacuzzi to now you're in the cold water. But with these webinars, we try to always apply action so that water can stay warm for you and you can always be in the jacuzzi because it's all about action, action, action. We've heard knowledge is power, but action is even more power. So here we go. Here's our first practical tip for everyone for designing your life. The first thing to keep in mind is this. How many of you when someone asks you a question of this? How's it going? Are you okay? And it's always you're thinking, how am I going to respond to this person? What's important with this kind of question, and when it comes to designing your life, is your perspective. So your perspective, a lot of us will include our work. So how many times does someone ask you, how's it going in your life? You might go to a family function, someone asks you, how's it going? And the first, and maybe even the only thing that you say is something to do with work. Oh yeah, I'm working hard, or work's busy, work. But designing your life starts with opening your perspective to realizing work's important, but so is play, but so is love, and so is health. And so by everyone listening right now, when someone asks you next time, hey, how's it going? How are you? Are you okay? Think about these 4 different pillars, because yes, work might be, not the best of times for you right now, but maybe the love in your life has been through the roof. You've had the most amazing times with your son or daughter. Now in that conversation, it's a positive conversation, not a negative conversation. So we're making sure that we don't have too much cortisol in our body, stress hormones are lower, and we're not impacting our day in a negative way just by a conversation like that. So to keep in mind are these 4 areas for that question, how's it going? Being work, play, love, and health. A little bit more about play. Play, we might associate that with children, but adults can play too. But just realize play things for fun, things, not for merit, not for money, not for prestige, just totally for the joy of doing something is play. And we all know health as well, which is a foundation. So this is your how's it going dashboard for designing your life. Moving on to our second practical tip with designing your life. So far we talked about answering the question of how's it going. Right now we're going to talk about another amazing practical tool that you can use in your daily life. And here we go. It's called the Energy Engagement Map. This is a phenomenal tool. How it works is this. You write down your top energy giving or draining activities throughout your day. I'm actually going to show you what my map looks like on the next slide. You write down your 10 activities, and then along the x-axis of the lines, you put how high those bars are. So the number 1 might be an energy giving activity, it might be very positive. Number 2 might be energy gaining, might be halfway up positive. Number 3 might be energy draining, so the bar goes negative for the third one. So that's what we're doing right now. So now in designing your life, we're bringing up energy, because we've heard of time management, but what about energy management? Energy, energy, energy. As you do these activities as well, you'll find a very interesting premise, and that is this. Your space can sometimes create your behavior. Your space creates your behavior. So keep that in mind as well with a list like this. So what we do is we write down all of our positive and negative activities that come top of mind for energy giving, energy draining. We then look at this and say, okay, are there any common patterns? Maybe the energy givings have to do with being around people. Maybe the energy drainings have something else to do with distance or doing things later in the day. It could be anything, literally anything. But the point is that you're looking at this with an open set of eyes and you're establishing awareness. Because when you have these in front of you, when you look at these trends, that's when you can then say, okay, these are the changes I'm going to make in my life. Because what we want to do is we want to follow the positive energy activities. You'll notice with this is that there's a really cool thing called the first last effect. And that is this. You remember, sorry, it's called the best last effect. You remember the last thing, the best. So what you want to do to end your day, you always want to try to end with a positive. right there, that you go to bed ending on a positive, because your memory will remember what happened at the end of the day the easiest. So we put our positive at the end. What we also want to do is if we have energy draining activities, we want to squish those right between two positives. So by doing this, we can design our day. And if you think this takes a long time, think about this. If you have 24 hours in a day, let's say you sleep for 8 hours, that leaves 16 hours. 16 hours is 960 minutes. To take 10 minutes of doing something like this, or to take 10 minutes of each day, just strategizing, thinking, designing your life, taking 10 minutes each day is 1% of your day. 1%. 10 minutes of 960 minutes is about 1%. So keep that in mind. Can you give 1% to designing your best possible life? Because here we go with what my energy engagement map looks like. Here we go. Things that give me energy: reading, listening to music. Things that drain my energy: food prep. I do need to get better with food prep, but for some reason with food right now, I do eat healthy, but I value convenience, and so I love food that has been prepared for me, and if I have to pay extra for that, so be it for right now. But that's something that is energy draining activity for me. Food prep. What's also energy draining is driving, and of course house cleaning. The beauty of things like this as well is that once you start doing these things, you start to think of more afterwards. So you build up your awareness. So for example, when I did this energy engagement worksheet, and then we were preparing this webinar, I then realized, okay, if there was an 11th spot and I could put another energy draining activity, I would put anything to do with project management. I love getting my feet wet and being in the trenches and applying action and getting things done. But in terms of looking at timelines or logging details and being diligent with that, it's just an energy drainer for me. So that's something I learned about after the fact with this. So you'll see that this is a generative process over time, but right now we're really setting a nice foundation and we're building our awareness. For things like energy draining, I know I can listen to podcasts while driving. I also noticed that my positive activities are related to trying to build up my best self, those things that have to do with improving and in learning. Those are my positives. That's a premise or a principle in my life right now. So you can see here, we're really building up our awareness with this energy engagement map worksheet. And we'll actually distribute a worksheet for everyone following this webinar. That everyone has their own worksheet, they can print it off and share with loved ones as well. But with that being said, we're very, very curious about everyone listening. What are types of positive energy for you? And so I'm going to give it back to Ali for the next slide, and we're going to do an audience poll.
All right, everybody. Ali back here for getting you guys engaged in this webinar. We want you to be listening to what Nathan's saying, but we also want to hear from you and get some real life examples on what types of activities are positive energy for you. So we're only talking about the positives here. Maybe we can talk about negatives a little bit later. But if you guys want to head over to the chat feature of this webinar and type in some answers there, I'll give you guys a second to do so. We've got a couple coming in. Positive energy, we have being creative. That's a very good outlet there. That's definitely going to be something that's positive in your life. We have exercise, writing fiction. That's a great one. That's another one of those creative outlets. Playing with your kids, playing with your family, dance class, talking with loved ones, meditating, walking. We have a lot of exercise, meditation, yoga. Spending time with people is seeming to be a pretty big theme here. Spending time with friends, with girlfriend, volunteering. That's another great way that we've never really touched on yet is volunteering, giving your energy to other people and sharing that in a positive way.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's a great one. And then finally, again, walks in nature. So that's a lot of great um, feedback there. Nathan, do you have anything to say about those answers?
Yeah, it's amazing because the reality is that there's no wrong answers, and that's such a beautiful thing to say with this, because everyone's life is unique, and so all of those different activities are they're unique to each person, and other people find value in activities that are stated. But bottom line is that even if someone didn't hear something that's valuable to them, just because someone else isn't doing it doesn't mean that can be applicable to you. But thank you to everyone who shared those.
Yeah, something interesting about most of those answers is that there was a lot of duplicates. And what you were saying before about how everybody's life is different, it seems like the positives are all really in the same category, it seems.
Hmm. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to do one more slide about this point about energy and shifting from time management to energy management, and we'll go on to another really cool activity. So another point about about energy management is this. Regarding positive activities, a really cool concept is called flow. And this has been originated by a gentleman named Mahai Csikszentmihalyi. And so this is when you're doing an activity and you lose track of time. You're in your own world and you have so much clarity about what's going on, and you're just like, this is me right now. That's flow. It's the balance between something challenging but having the confidence and mastery of doing it. So these are the type of activities that are through the roof with positives. And so these are activities that we want to do. If we have our day, we know our flow states, our flow activities, we know our negatives. We want to squeeze those negatives between flow states and then try to end our day on a flow activity. That is the secret formula to following your energy throughout the day. It's interesting because a lot of you already are probably kind of familiar with this concept of being realistic, but also challenging yourself, because we know, if everyone heard of SMART goals, the R in SMART is actually stands for realistic. So this is something that all the dots are hopefully connecting for everyone. And now we're opening our mind to what flow is and how we can try to find our own flow states, because that is a key to managing our energy throughout the day. What's beautiful about all these activities that we're doing is that in reality, we're not creating anything new. All we're doing is taking the invisible and making it visible. Because when it's visible, that's when we can manage something. So by taking something that's invisible, kind of almost subconscious in our life, making it conscious right now and visible, then it's much easier for us to manage it and make the appropriate changes and make a healthy lifestyle. Okay, here we go for our next such fun activity, and it's called mind mapping. So what we're going to do right here, or what individuals do for this activity, is they dig even deeper on their positives. They write down circles of their positives, and then write down some things related to that positive, why that positive might be the case. I'm actually going to show you as well my mind mapping on the next slide and what my napkin sketch looks like. Even if you're at a restaurant, grab that napkin. You can do this anytime and just don't overthink it. What's required from this activity are these ingredients right here. Everyone ready? Here we go. This is what is required. An open mind, no judgment, wild ideas, and quantity. Focus on quality later, but quantity. We're mapping to think, not mapping to validate. So we're just getting all of our ideas out in front of us, and then we're trying to connect the dots with our mind mapping to figure out even deeper with those positives, why they might be. And so here we go to my napkin sketch. You can see as I was doing this, I came up with even more positives in my life and the different connections between each one, just from a simple napkin and a Sharpie. You know, obviously this does not look beautiful, but the point is that it's done. The point is that it happened. Action happened. We're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for beauty. We're looking for action in this case. The green and the orange highlighter represent what I thought were the biggest eye openings for myself when I was doing it. You can see that I love helping others, and that's, a part of that's why I enjoy doing these webinars. That's why I enjoy doing public talks and public speaking. And actually, when I apply movement in my life, when I might go to the gym, I'm doing that so I can be the most at my physical best, so that I can perform at my best. So all of a sudden now the gym is related to helping others as positive energy activities in my life. I also realized that when it comes to networking and meeting others, I love trying to add value to others. I love meeting them and saying, hey, based on what you just said, I've heard of this, or I came across this resource. I might know this other person. I'll connect them. I'll share something with them. I love adding value to them. And at the bottom line about that is that it's helping them apply action. So taking what they said to me, orally said to me, and being, hey, this is what you can do to apply action if I think I can add value to them. It's a lot like when I'm interviewing someone or if I'm talking to someone, trying to get to know them better. I'm always looking for what the action is in something. So it's less talk, more action, and both of those are related right there. So I like networking. I like interviewing others because of these pillars of adding value and really finding the action underneath the surface. So you can see by mind mapping, I'm uncovering my positives and then increasing my awareness. You can see with something like this, we're being very creative, we're being very imaginative. Of course, there's a time and place for this mindset, and there's a time and place for a typical analytical mindset. So don't think you have to reshift your whole life into being more imaginative and then brainstorm more often, because if a door handle is broken, bottom line, you have to fix the door handle. But your life is not a door handle. And so your life, when you look at your life, you don't have to be analytical. You can be imaginative, see what the possibilities are, and use this different approach instead. So a time and place for both mindsets, but just realize your life is a lot different than a doorknob. And so treat yourself with the most respect as you can, and give yourself the time and effort to think about these activities, put it all out on the table. Don't limit yourself, use 10 times thinking, think big, and apply these to your life. Here we go with another key point about mind mapping as well. Once we've uncovered everything, we've got everything out of our brain, what we want to do now is called Odyssey planning. And so for each activity, for each positive, if we're going to actually apply action in our life, we have to figure out, do we have the resources? In other words, can we actually do something? We want to figure out, do you like it? Do you want it? That sounds like a very simple question, but it's okay to have something a positive and something to be readily available, but it's not necessarily you've been there, done that. You don't necessarily want to do it anymore, so it's okay not to like something. So you want to figure out the second one. Do you like it? Third one, do you have confidence, a sense of mastery towards it as well? So these are kind of three radars you want to think about with these activities, and if you're going to actually apply them in your daily life. So you've got all your positives listed. Now you're trying to figure out, okay, all these things I've come up with that might be these crazy wild ideas, how can I actually filter them and see if I can apply them to my daily life? So Odyssey planning is actually your filter. There's a really cool kind of almost a math equation in this kind of realm of thinking that goes like this. And if anyone has a pen and paper, this is a really cool math equation to write down. And it's from another book called Principles by Ray Dalio. And this equation is this: dreams plus reality plus determination equals a successful life. That's dreams plus reality plus determination equals a successful life. We had our dreams with mind mapping. We laid it out all on the table. Now we're touching base with reality, still having fun with it. We're touching base with reality a little bit because we have to be realistic. And we're going to apply, of course, determination, and that's a successful life a life well designed. So dreams plus reality plus determination equals a successful life. Now, as you are doing this, a really cool concept to keep in mind is this. If you want to change your life, what do? You change your conversations. Change your life to change your conversations. This is a phenomenal book called Conversations Worth Having, because conversations are a constant in your life. Whether you're speaking to someone else, whether you're speaking, you're in your own head, conversations is a constant. You're constantly either speaking to others, speaking to yourself. It's a constant. It's always present in our life. So it makes sense to try to have some sort of mastery over it. The thing is this, if you are stressed in your life and you're always looking over your shoulder, your body goes in fight or flight mode, and it's almost survival mode. And so less oxygen nutrients are shuttled to your brain to think. But if you can have fantastic, safe conversations, that those oxygen, those nutrients are now going to your brain, and that's how you also get high performance. The athlete has high performance when the athlete is calm. The athlete is stressed, it's much harder for them to be at high performance. It's much easier for them to feel tired, to run out of oxygen, to feel dizzy, to run out of nutrients. So your conversations are something you want to keep in mind, because the nature of your conversations determines your capacity to thrive. Gossiping is too easy. Gossiping is literally one of the most easiest thing to do, is just talk about negatives, especially about other people. But realize your conversations are important. You can see here, high performing teams, the ratio of positive to negative themes in their talk. Inquiry versus advocacy. You see high performance teams, low performance teams. Someone who keeps saying me, I. Self versus other people, me, we, us, our. You see how high performance teams and low performance teams relate. So surround yourself with positive individuals and be mindful of your conversations to have a well-designed life. Here we go with our next slide. A really cool project is Project Aristotle. This has to do with our last slide about conversations and about psychological safety in your life, feeling a sense of bringing your full self. You can see Google did a study and they looked at all of their different teams across Google, and they found these themes were common among their high performing teams. And among these themes, are things, okay, if the team has meaning, if they have clarity and structure, if people can depend on each other, that makes sense. It'll be a high performing team. But what also happened is these teams had psychological safety in common. Vulnerability was okay. It was okay to mess up. It was okay not to always have the answer. It was okay to show your true colors. Psychological safety. If you can find psychological safety, whichever decisions you might make, it's much easier to have a life well designed. So think about, your typical values when it comes to job searching, or when it comes to meeting new friends, when it comes to going to events. But also think about, do I feel psychologically safe there? Is psychological safety present? Because when it is, I know I can be my best self. So psychological safety for your life, courtesy of Google and Project Aristotle. Okay, here we go. Next slide right about now. All right. What we want to do now is we want to kind of take a step back and keep in mind, pausing is not the same as stopping. Pausing is not the same as stopping. So we're taking a step back to diagnose something before we design something. So far we've talked about designing our life. With that, we've talked about what are some positive energy-giving activities in our life. We've been mindful of our conversations. But let's go a little bit deeper. We want to elaborate on one of our previous slides when we talked about Odyssey planning and thinking about, do you actually like something? It's such a simple question, as we mentioned earlier, but let's go deeper with it. What are you actually thinking about? Because their problem might not be your problem. Their solution might not be your solution. And so make sure you're focusing on the right problem. Don't waste years, weeks, days, months focusing on the wrong problem. Take that 1% of your day, those 10 minutes to diagnose and think, strategize before you start designing. Always listen to others, but also be skeptical. Apply it to your life. Because we have 3 fundamental questions on the next slide, all to do with building our compass, our North Star. We don't have to know, exactly what the next 10 years or 5 years hold for us. What we can do is we can keep in mind what our North Star is and the direction we're going in. Because here we go with our 3 main questions right here. Alignment happens when who you are, what you believe, and what you do are all in sync. This is a life well designed. If we have a peace of mind, it's much easier to be able to develop healthier habits. It's much easier to help others. Alignment, alignment, alignment. Life that is always generating itself. It's generative. We don't know necessarily the next step, but we know our North Star. We don't always have to see the whole staircase, but we can take the first step. So we're building our compass, our North Star, because we know how much decision-making matters in our life. How can we go somewhere if every time we're at a standstill for a decision, we make the wrong one? We make the one that's not right for us. So we're building our compass of alignment in these 3 areas. What's fundamental to this is perspective. And so here's a paradigm shift for you, for everyone listening as well. I'm going to read this point word for word because it's such a fantastic point, and that is this. The key to letting go is to move on and grab something else, aka action. It's putting your attention on something, not off something. We try to always think about, I can't think about this anymore. But instead of having the intention of stopping thinking about something, bring something else into your life, a positive. That's the key. That is the key. Along these lines is minimalism, getting rid of unnecessary objects in your life. And so one of our Zest Wellness team members, Katie, had created this awesome resource called the 21-Day Minimalism Challenge. So 21 days, which is the time it takes to build a habit, you have each day a different action towards minimalism, towards letting go of what you don't need, to make it that much easier to find who you are, to find what you believe, and your perspective. The base of this is this. When you start each day, simply try to notice 5 new things. Such an innocent question, but your perspective for managing your energy, for managing your social relationships, to managing what you feel like after work for the day, to manage if you're going to go exercise after work, if you're going to go do something, other type of movement after work, a lot of it can be based on your perspective. And so something for everyone to keep in mind, and we will be distributing this minimalism challenge afterwards as well. If anyone wants to do it, it's 21 days, and we hope that it can help everyone with their perspective and then build the capacity for all these healthy habits in their life. Now, what are some some cheat codes? What are some hacks you can apply to your life if you're thinking, okay, Zest Wellness Team, this is nice, but you know, how do I maximize what you're saying right now? And here are some day-to-day hacks right here. Be curious. I just mentioned during the last slide, and I'll say it again, when you start each day, try to simply notice 5 new things. And that ties into gratitude as well. Because when you're curious, it makes you easier at becoming lucky. Another cool math equation is this. Luck equals hard work plus opportunity. I'll say that again. Luck equals hard work plus opportunity. The second action here is simply try stuff. And we're using plain language on purpose. We don't have to make this overcomplicated and use jargon, but simply try stuff. We learned earlier, passion comes after action. Literally, passion comes after action. 4 very, very powerful words. We know life's a journey. The last slide had a point about balance happens over time, not in one day, not in one week. It's constantly flowing, the waves up and down. Lastly, on this slide, ask for help. Don't be afraid of establishing your own dream team, those you go to for help. As long as you're realistic with people, they might help, and they probably will help. Just be realistic about it though. Don't ask someone for millions of dollars. Don't tell someone to put you on a spaceship and fly you somewhere. Be realistic, ask people for help, but don't be afraid to collaborate with others. As we just mentioned, designing your dream team is important. We're all in this together, support. And so Ali will come in with our next slide for another poll.
All right, so as Nathan just said, we want you guys to start thinking about who is part of that dream team. Who do you want to surround yourself with that will build you up rather than tear you down and help you design your life rather than just have it feel chaotic like it may already with a lack of direction. So you guys can again go into the chat here and start submitting kind of who you want to be part of your dream team. It can be super specific or it can be more general, like family, friends who push me, that type of thing. So I'll just give you guys a few seconds to open that. So a couple that we have so far are just a couple of the general ones. Open-minded people, that's a great one. You don't want to be surrounding yourself with people who are constantly bringing you down. Coworkers, that's interesting. Feel like maybe coworkers might be something that you would want to be able to choose, but that's awesome that they already have their dream team. Working with them day to day, family, my boyfriend, family, my friends, my husband, closest of friends, people that love to travel. That's always a good thing to bring people along that have similar interests as you, so you can develop in the ways that are you're most passionate about. Like-minded people, another awesome one. All right, and I think that's it. Nathan, any thoughts?
Yeah, that I absolutely I love the last poll question for sure. I love this one because it's kind of every sports team is that it's a team. It's not even one individual. So it just goes to show you that that teams can be super powerful, and also for everyone listening too. Um, you know, One of the healthy habits actually within our Zest Wellness platform um, is building relationships. So it just goes to show you that that is an ingredient to a healthy lifestyle in and of itself. So some super cool thoughts on that one. Ali, how about you? Is there anyone a part of your dream team, or did any answers specifically resonate with you?
I think the ones that really speak to me are just the ones that where you're surrounding yourself with people that push you out of your comfort zone, bring you to do things that you might not typically do, but once you've done them, you're like, wow, this is a significant part of my life. I can't imagine not doing these things. And I think that just goes along with like-minded people, because if you're into providing value, like you were saying earlier, Nathan, then and other people are interested in providing value as well, then you guys are all gonna win from that. So that's my opinion there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well said.
thanks.
Fantastic. You're welcome. So, okay, everyone. Well, we have a couple more fantastic slides, and then we'll close out this session. And what we want to keep in mind, the last couple slides we talked about perspective, we talked about day-to-day hacks, we talked about building our compass, our North Star. What we want to cover right now is also decision making. And so once again, it's one of those things that, it sounds like such common sense, but we know common sense isn't always common practice. And so decision making is extremely important in our life. In particular, we want to let everyone know that it's okay to follow your gut. We have this ancient part of our brain called the basal ganglia, and it actually doesn't communicate with words. And so that's why when someone says, I got this feeling in my gut, kind of uneasy about something, it could be 100% legitimate. And so it's okay to communicate. It's okay to listen to your feelings. And so it's okay to follow your gut, because that's what we want to keep in mind. Another cool concept is this phrase of be careful of amygdala hijackings. Basal ganglia is an aspect of your brain. Your amygdala is another aspect of your brain. Your amygdala is associated with fight or flight responses. And so, your amygdala is what releases norepinephrine when you're in fight or flight mode in your body, and you have adrenaline going, and you're on edge. You might have goosebumps, and you're very hyper at the time. That's your amygdala that's going. And and this phrase resonates a lot with my life, and it's really tough to make a good decision when you got adrenaline flowing through your body. And so, I can count on my fingers and my toes how many times I've said something I regret because of the adrenaline that was in my body. And so be careful not to fall into the trap of making a decision, saying something or just making a decision overall when you got your amygdala is hijacked and you're all amped up and you're ready to fight or flight. Be careful. Don't stop, but pause and make your decision making at a better time of day or the next day. So something to think about for sure. The last point about this slide is when you're making decisions, we know, of course, the typical benefits that might be associated with decisions, but never overlook the benefit of time. One decision could be better than another in multiple different aspects, but what if that decision that might not seem as good is actually the decision that gives you the most time flexibility, and time flexibility is of value to you? That's 100% legitimate. Time is just as important as any other decision that might come in and factor for yourself, this notion of time affluence. So something to keep in mind. It's okay to make a decision that leads to more time flexibility in your life, because that might be of value to you. Here we go with our other really interesting concept, and that is this: failure reframe. I know 100% it's so much easier said than done, but just keep in mind, failure is a raw material for success. What you actually want to do in reality is you want to fail fast. Fail fast. You want to try stuff, you want to have a bias to action, And if something's not going well, you actually want it to fail as quick as you can. That way you waste the least amount of time, or waste the amount of resources. You want to fail fast. And sometimes in the tech world, it's called being lean. Uh, lean strategies, because failing is okay. It's a raw material for success. It's the learning is what we're after. We're not after being perfect, we're after learning. And so this is literally a habit within our Zest Wellness platform that you can start using today. Reframing our failures, learning versus being perfect, and all related to this healthy habit within the platform of reducing stress. Once again, another dot connection. Yep, you guessed it, related to perspective. So failure reframe is so important. With that being said, our next slide is our conclusion slide, because what we've talked about so far is we've talked about answering the question of how's it going. We've talked about energy management. We've talked about probing the positives in our life. We've talked about the power of our conversations. We talked about these key concepts of perspective, daily hacks, dream teams, decision making, failure reframe. That's what this webinar was meant to do, so that you have the confidence, you have the capacity to start building your healthy habits. So here we go with our conclusion slide. And I'm going to even read this first phrase word for word. I like to read things word for word. I just find the phrase itself speaks volumes. And that is this: you start with who you are, then you have ideas and try things out. You have a bias to action, and then you make the best choice. Try things. You don't have to see the full staircase, but you can take the first step. It's also important to keep in mind is life is infinite. It's not finite. There's no winner. There's no set definition. What's good for one person might not be good for another. What's of value to one person might not be of value to another. Life is not a soccer game. It's not a football game. It's not a basketball game. It's not a cricket game. It's not a rugby game. Life is infinite. Multiple different paths for multiple different individuals. We get this feedback loop, positive feedback loop of be, learn, become. And so thank you to everyone for listening to the webinar. We're going to give it back to Ali right now. And what we do ask for everyone is that if you did find value in this webinar, feel free to send us any success stories or new insights you might have. And Ali will mention everyone how you can reach out on our different social media challenges. But we would love to hear from anyone if this webinar helped with your awareness and finding the unconscious in your life and bringing it into your conscious, bringing the invisible and making it visible. So Ali, back to you.
All right, just to close out here, I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining today. Nathan had some incredible knowledge bombs there, so I'm really happy that there was a lot of people around to listen to what he had to say, and hopefully it does have an impact on your life and helps you design it better for the life that you want to live. Just to follow up on the webinar, we are going to have some resources available to you guys, so keep your eyes on your inbox for those. Just a couple of worksheets, things like that you can print out, mostly that Nathan mentioned. This webinar was also recorded, so if you missed something or if you want to listen to it again, certain parts, that's also going to be available to you on the GoToWebinar website. We'll be providing links following the webinar. If you want to just hear more about what we're doing with Zest Wellness, or maybe you feel like you want to get involved with Zest Wellness, on this slide is kind of all of our points of contact there. So feel free to reach out on any platform that you feel necessary, and we hope to hear from you soon. Nathan, do you have anything else you want to say?
I don't, Ali. You close everything perfectly. And for everyone joining, thank you. We'll give you a couple minutes left to your day. And on behalf of Zest Wellness and myself, thank you to everyone.